let's talk about being too nice and what Machiavelli thought about all that. Sure, being kind is great, but you can definitely overdo it, especially when things get tough. Machiavelli, that old Italian thinker, basically said leaders sometimes need to be practical and, well, a bit sneaky rather than always being super sweet. Now, a lot of people thought Machiavelli was saying it's okay to be a jerk, Like he was telling leaders to be ruthless and lie. But some people think he was just being realistic. He saw the world wasn't always fair. And if you're too nice, people might take advantage. He wasn't saying forget being nice, though. He thought leaders needed to have good values, but also be smart enough to handle tricky situations and not get played. Sometimes that might mean making deals, being a bit sly, or even using force if they really had to. People are still arguing about this stuff today. Should leaders always be good no matter what? Or do they sometimes need to be a bit, shall we say, flexible to get things done in politics and power? It makes you think about what being a leader is really all about. Machiavelli's ideas still get people talking. He reminds us that leading isn't simple. You need to be a good person, but you also need to understand people and how power works. It's about finding that sweet spot between doing the right thing and actually getting things done in a complicated world. But that wasn't the whole story. Turns out medieval Europe wasn't all knights in shining armor like we see in movies. Sure, that's the story we like, but the reality? It was way more about shady politics and power plays. Before Machiavelli came along, everyone talked about honor and doing the right thing. But behind the scenes, it was pretty much a free-for-all with backstabbing and trickery. Florence was especially chaotic. Leaders came and went constantly, like a revolving door. Rumors flew around like crazy, and everyone was suspicious of everyone else. It was a far cry from those romantic tales of knights and love. People tried to stay hopeful, though. Religious leaders kept preaching about being good, and folks hoped that if they just did the right thing, they'd be okay. Then Machiavelli dropped the prince and totally flipped the script. He basically said, being nice isn't enough to survive in politics, especially when you're dealing with ruthless opponents. This idea that it's okay to do whatever it takes to win was shocking back then. Machiavelli's ideas caused a huge stir. People were both fascinated and horrified. He made everyone face the ugly truth about power, taking away all those comforting ideas about being moral. Some people hated his approach, while others were impressed by his honesty. Either way, his book was a game changer. Even today, people still talk about The Prince. Machiavelli's willingness to dig into how power works, even if it means suggesting some pretty ruthless strategies, has made him both famous and infamous. His work reminds us that the pursuit of power often isn't pretty, and it forces us to think about the tough choices leaders have to make. And what happened next would shock everyone. Okay, so Machiavelli grew up in Florence during a pretty wild time. Think lots of drama and power struggles, especially with the Medici family running the show. Watching all this unfold, he noticed that playing nice wasn't always the way to win in politics. Sometimes you had to do some pretty shady stuff to stay in charge. His famous book, The Prince, basically says a leader's main job is to keep things stable and secure, even if it means doing things that aren't exactly ethical. This idea that the result matters more than how you get there was super controversial. Some people thought he was saying morals don't matter in politics, while others saw him as just being realistic about how things work. The Prince really got people talking about what makes a good leader and the tough calls they have to make. It challenged the usual ideas about being moral and leading, making people think about the complicated decisions involved in running things. Machiavelli still talked about a lot today, and people have very different opinions about him. Some see him as someone who told it like it is, while others think he was encouraging bad behavior. No matter what you think of him, there's no denying Machiavelli's impact on political thinking. People still study and argue about his work centuries later. He reminds us that being a leader is tough, and you sometimes have to make hard choices to keep power and keep things running smoothly. His legacy shows just how powerful his ideas are and how they still matter in politics today. But that seed would soon blossom into something far more controversial. The Prince, by Niccolo Machiavelli, caused a huge stir back in the 1500s because it broke away from the usual political thinking. Basically, Machiavelli argued that getting and keeping power is what really matters, even if you have to do some questionable things. He famously said it's better for a ruler to be feared than loved. People were shocked. Critics called Machiavelli immoral and said he was encouraging tyranny and ignoring Christian values. They believed rulers should be ethical and follow religious teachings. Machiavelli thought that was naive. He felt real-world survival sometimes meant throwing morals out the window. Machiavelli defended his book, saying he wasn't promoting bad behavior, but just showing how politics really works. He claimed he was describing the reality of power, not an ideal world. He aimed to give an honest, objective view of politics as he saw it. This debate has gone on for centuries. Some think he was just a realist who understood the tough parts of politics, while others think he was a cynic who justified horrible acts. People still argue about whether The Prince is a guide for good leaders or a handbook for dictators. Machiavelli's legacy is complicated. Some admire him for his blunt honesty about power, while others think he's a threat to morals. Either way, his ideas have had a huge impact. People still debate his work, and his name is connected with the ruthless pursuit of power. Whether you see him as a realist, cynic, or something else, his contribution to understanding political power is undeniable. He shattered illusions, challenged old ideas, and made people rethink morality and politics. Since The Prince came out, many political figures, from revolutionaries to dictators, have used his ideas. His work has been used to justify both good and bad actions, and his name is linked to political cunning. Even if you don't like his ideas, you can't ignore their influence on history. Machiavelli reminds us that power struggles often involve moral dilemmas, and the line between idealism and realism is blurry in politics. And that leads us to an even murkier question. Who was Machiavelli, really? So, Machiavelli's name got totally tangled up with being sneaky and manipulative. Machiavellian practically became an insult, all thanks to The Prince. That book laid out some pretty intense ways to grab and hold on to power, and some of it was definitely seen as shady. People started picturing him as this puppet master pulling strings from the shadows, always trying to get an edge. Some even thought he was just cold-hearted and loved playing games. There were even crazy stories about him plotting to overthrow governments, but historians who actually looked at his stuff, like letters and official documents, found a different side of him. Sure, he saw some messed up stuff and wrote about it in The Prince, but he also wrote funny plays and had real friendships that showed he was actually a pretty warm and witty guy. He seemed to really value smarts and courage over being cruel. His work showed he got how people worked, and the political scene back then. Even with that, people still argued about who he really was. Every new group in charge in Florence either secretly used his advice or publicly trashed him to look good. Some people today think he wasn't trying to push evil, just pointing out the ugly truth about politics. They think he was given a warning, not a how-to guide for dictators. But others still think he loved the idea of playing people and thought everyone was pretty selfish. The real Machiavelli was probably a mix of things. He lived in a crazy time in Italy with lots of political drama. His writings reflected that, where power grabs and betrayals were normal. Maybe he was just being real about how important power was and what it took to get it. Or maybe he wanted to make things better by showing how messed up the system was. Whatever he was going for, people are still talking about Machiavelli. His work gets studied a lot and still influences politicians and strategists. We might never know for sure if he was a bad guy or just a realist, but what he added to political thinking and how he changed the world is pretty clear, and that was only scratching the surface. Machiavelli had some pretty intense ideas about people. Basically, he thought that when things get really tough, people can get really self-centered and even mean. He saw this as just part of how we're wired, and said we can't ignore it without things going sideways. One of his big things was how important it is to look good to others. He felt it was more about how people see you than who you actually are. Even if a leader is a good person, if they seem weak, they'll be in trouble. You can see this a lot today with marketing, politics, and social media, where how things look is often more important than the truth. In our world today, where looking good online or in public can make or break you, what Machiavelli said still hits home. Leaders who are good at managing how they're seen often do way better than those who just tell it like it is. This makes you wonder how much being genuine really matters compared to putting on a good show. He also talked about being kind on purpose. He wasn't saying you should always be ruthless, But that being nice and generous works best when you plan it out. By mixing being friendly with standing your ground, a leader can get people on their side and keep them from walking all over them. This is a lot like how we talk about being assertive today, being able to say what you need, but still being respectful. It also shows how important it is to know how to handle emotions, both yours and other people's, if you want to be strategically kind. Even though it's been centuries, people are still talking about Machiavelli's ideas. Some think he was just negative and cynical, but he definitely pointed out some truths about how people act and how power works. By acknowledging that people can be both good and bad, we get a better understanding of ourselves and the world. But that wasn't the only secret he revealed. Okay, so Machiavelli was all about not being too available. If you're around all the time, people might not value you as much. But if you're a little harder to get a hold of, suddenly you're more interesting and desirable. This works for basically anything, from dating to your career. Keeping a bit of mystery and not being too easy to reach can really boost your appeal. He also thought it was super important to be careful with information. In his day, and honestly even now, knowing things is power. If you spill all your plans to everyone, you're just asking for trouble. People could use it against you. Machiavelli suggested sharing info only when you absolutely have to, keeping things on a need-to-know basis. That way, you're in control and can shape how people see things. And another big thing for Machiavelli was keeping your cool. If you want to be a good leader or negotiate well, you got to stay calm under pressure. Showing you're strong and confident makes people respect you. But if you get all emotional, angry, or scared, people will see it as a weakness. Basically, he was saying you need to know yourself and control your feelings to get ahead in life. Even though Machiavelli lived a long time ago, his ideas still make sense. In today's world where everyone's connected and information is everywhere, it's really important to manage how you present yourself, control what you share, and keep your emotions in check. If you use his ideas wisely and ethically, you can build better relationships, protect yourself, and achieve your goals. Basically, Machiavelli's insights into people and how society works are super useful even today. If you can use the power of being a bit scarce, be smart with what you share, and stay emotionally balanced, you'll be a better communicator, negotiator, and leader. His stuff might have come from old school politics and power games, but it's still relevant because it's all about how people work and how to be successful. And what happened next would upend how the world interpreted power. Basically, Machiavelli thought timing was everything when it came to running things. Sure, taking charge is important, but jumping the gun can be a disaster. He said leaders should chill out, watch what's going on, and strike when the moment is right. Think of it as smart waiting. Don't just act because you want to. Sometimes it's better to let others go first, see what they're up to, and then make your move. There's a big difference between people who freak out over every little thing and those who stay calm, get the facts, and act when their rivals aren't expecting it. That second way can really work. Back then, people switched sides all the time and got betrayed a lot. One wrong move could cost you everything. Today, you might lose a deal, mess up your reputation, or tick off important people. Even in offices now, the same idea holds true. People who are patient, think things through, and pick their moment often get ahead without making a big fuss. On the other hand, those who jump into things too fast often end up with problems and bad feelings. Machiavelli basically said, if you want to outlast the competition, you need to be patient and think ahead. But there's more to it than just waiting. You also need to be able to change plans. While waiting for the right moment is key, you can't just sit still. Smart leaders always watch what's happening, see what's new, and change their plans as needed. Being too stuck in your ways is just as bad as acting without thinking. Also, you've got to be ready to grab chances when they pop up. Sometimes the best opportunities come out of nowhere, and if you're ready to change course, you can make the most of them. You need to be flexible, think fast, and be willing to take smart risks. So Machiavelli's advice isn't just about waiting. It's about having a smart way of doing things that mixes waiting, being able to change plans, and jumping on opportunities. This lets leaders handle tough situations and even make things go their way. But there's one final element that separates mere survivors from true game changers. It's becoming an unpredictable anomaly. Machiavelli basically said that if you're too predictable, you're an easy target. Smart people will use your routines against you. To stay in charge, you've got to mix things up and avoid being put in a box. Think about entrepreneurs shaking up industries or politicians with wild campaign ideas. They gain a following or respect because you never know what they'll do next. They play by their own rules and constantly surprise everyone. It's risky, sure, and trying to be unpredictable can sometimes just make you look chaotic. But Machiavelli thought it was best to be unpredictable with a plan. Throw out options and distractions to keep people guessing. Talk less, share fewer details, and switch tactics so nobody sees you coming. When you nail this balance, the game changes. Rivals are unsure, allies pay closer attention, and critics think twice. This combo of being unpredictable and in control creates an attractive vibe that's hard to ignore. Let's dig into how these Machiavellian ideas work in practice. The art of the act. Machiavelli stressed the importance of putting on a show to hide what you're really thinking, offer choices, fake weaknesses, and mess with how people see you. If they can't figure you out, you're in charge. Keep it vague. Talking less and not giving away too much makes you seem mysterious and interesting. Others won't get the full picture, which means they can't predict your moves. Plus, you stay flexible because you haven't made any promises. Take smart risks. Being unpredictable isn't about being reckless. Machiavelli said to take calculated risks, thinking about what you could gain or lose first. Weigh the odds, see what might happen, and have backup plans. Roll with the punches. Being able to adapt and jump on opportunities is key to staying powerful. You need to stay informed, listen to new info, and be ready to change your plans. Timing is everything. Knowing when to act and when to chill out is crucial. Spot the right moment, hit weaknesses, and ride the wave of momentum. If you get good at these Machiavellian tricks, you can boost your power and influence. You can become someone people respect and shape things the way you want. But remember, use these ideas ethically and think about how they affect others. But how do you merge all of these strategies? Kindness, distance, silence, timing, unpredictability, without losing your sense of self. Machiavelli might sound a bit cold and calculating at first, but he wasn't saying to forget all about being good. He was more about being smart with your kindness, not just handing it out without thinking. When you're kind on purpose, it actually means more to the person on the receiving end. And if you're kind but also have your limits and aren't a pushover, people respect you more. Picture this. You're a generous person, but you also have your boundaries, and don't let people walk all over you. You treat everyone fairly, but you're not going to be taken for a ride. You stay cool when things get tough and keep your cards close to your chest. If someone tries to mess with you, they'll realize you're not someone they can easily push around. That mix of being nice and smart is really what Machiavelli was getting at. Not being a jerk or a saint, but being flexible and knowing how to deal with people. Of course, some will always call it manipulative to be selective with your kindness or keep things to yourself. But here's the thing. Do you want to let bad people take advantage of your good nature and leave you helpless? Machiavelli basically said that being a good person doesn't mean you have to be a doormat. You can be both good and practical if you know how. Basically, Machiavelli wanted us to find a balance. Life can be tough and unpredictable, and you need to know how to handle it. That doesn't mean you have to give up your values or be mean. It just means you need to be aware, strategic, and stand up for yourself when you need to. When you're both good and practical, you become stronger, more adaptable, and more successful. But there's a darker flip side to consider. It's the risk of abandoning ethics completely. People either love him or hate him. Some say he's all about sneaky tricks and playing dirty to grab power, which, yeah, sounds pretty bad. They think it just turns everyone into paranoid tyrants nobody trusts. But honestly, there's more to it. He wasn't saying be a total jerk all the time. He knew you had to be smart and strategic, but also that going too far with the mean stuff would backfire. In The Prince, he even says don't make people hate you, because then they'll just rebel and you're done. He was all about finding that sweet spot where people respect you, but are also a little careful. He was mainly worried about keeping leaders in charge in a tough world. He wasn't saying forget morals completely, just that you gotta mix being nice with being strong and practical. Sure, sometimes a little trickery helps, but you still need some kind of moral compass and friends on your side. If you're just out for yourself and don't care about anything else, you'll end up with everyone against you. Plus, He was big on being able to change things up when you need to, knowing what's going on, seeing trouble coming, and being able to deal with it. That's super important, especially today. Some people see him as saying it's okay to be totally bad, but really, he was just giving a real-world look at how power works, both the good and the bad, and that leaves us with a final choice. Will you remain ignored or adapt to reality? Doing good deeds and being a morally upright person is commendable, but it doesn't always guarantee success in life. Sometimes individuals who are ambitious and ruthless in their pursuit of success, even if they are not morally perfect, may achieve their goals faster. This can be disheartening for those who always strive to do the right thing, as they may find that their good intentions and actions do not always lead to the outcomes they expect. Machiavelli's philosophy is centered around pragmatism and realpolitik. He doesn't advocate for immoral behavior, but rather emphasizes the importance of understanding the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. To get things done when not everyone plays by the book, you've got to be flexible and sharp. In essence, Machiavelli's philosophy is about being strategic and maintaining a sense of control. It's about staying calm under pressure, choosing your battles wisely, and not revealing your true intentions or weaknesses. By doing so, you can uphold your principles and values without being exploited or taken advantage of by others. It's about establishing boundaries and commanding respect while remaining true to yourself. You can safeguard your beliefs and what you hold dear without being manipulated or deceived. There is a common misconception that being a good person and being successful are mutually exclusive, but this is not necessarily true. Machiavelli suggests that these two qualities can coexist. The world has always been a challenging and competitive place, and it's possible to achieve success without compromising your morals or resorting to unethical behavior. Machiavelli's message is not to be cruel or malicious, but to be pretty sharp and practical in a world that often does its own thing. By finding a balance between being a virtuous person and thinking strategically, you can increase your chances of leading a fulfilling and successful life. Remember, it's not about being perfect or always doing the right thing. It's about being adaptable, resilient, and making informed decisions that align with your values and goals. By understanding the realities of the world and acting accordingly, you can navigate the complexities of life with confidence and achieve success on your own terms. Yet you might wonder, how exactly do I take these abstract ideas and apply them to my daily life? Here's how to play the game of presence. 1. Don't be everywhere all the time. Pick and choose when you show up. People will notice you more if you're not always around. Let people miss you a bit. Makes your time with them more special. Take care of yourself first. You don't need to solve everyone's problems. 2. Share smartly. Give out the info that matters, but keep your personal stuff to yourself. Show what you're good at, but don't reveal your weaknesses. It's okay to say that's a bit personal. Set your boundaries. Build trust little by little. Share more as you get to know people. 3. Look and act confident. Stand up straight, look people in the eye, and speak clearly. Fake it till you make it if you need to. Dress sharp. It makes a difference in how people see you and how you feel about yourself. Watch your body language. It says a lot about you. 4. Keep your cool. Someone tries to get under your skin? Take a breath before you react. Figure out why they're trying to provoke you. It'll help you handle it better. Sometimes the best move is no move at all. Let it slide. 5. Keep them guessing. Don't be too predictable. Switch things up a bit. Instead of always saying yes, say maybe sometimes. Throw in a surprise now and then. Keeps things interesting. 6. Be kind, but be smart about it. Don't feel like you have to help everyone who asks. Help those who really need it or when it builds strong connections. It's fine to say no. Save your energy for what matters. If you're going to help, make it count. Do it thoughtfully. 7. Play the long game. Watch and learn before you jump in. Don't make rash decisions. Think things through. While others are rushing, you can use patience to your advantage. Bottom line, this isn't about being fake or cold. It's about being in control, making sure you're respected, and making your interactions count. When you're strategic about how you present yourself, you build better relationships, reach your goals, and feel more fulfilled. But here's the most intriguing part. Machiavelli's work continues to generate debate and discussion centuries after it was written. His ideas on power, manipulation, and human nature are as relevant today as they were in Renaissance Italy. Some scholars argue that Machiavelli would have thrived in the modern era of social media and information warfare. They envision him adapting The Prince to address the challenges of online propaganda, fake news, and cancel culture. They suggest that those in power deliberately misrepresented his ideas to prevent ordinary people from recognizing and resisting their manipulative tactics. By portraying Machiavelli as a cynical and amoral figure, they could maintain their dominance and control over the masses. Regardless of one's interpretation, Machiavelli's ideas continue to influence various aspects of modern life. His principles can be observed in the strategies employed by business leaders, politicians, and even individuals in their personal relationships. The phrase Machiavellian has become synonymous with cunning, deception, and the prioritization of pragmatism over ethics. The fundamental question posed by Machiavelli's work remains: will you allow yourself to be manipulated by others, or will you learn to navigate the complexities of power and protect your own interests? Machiavelli's insights into human nature and power dynamics remain remarkably accurate. They encourage us to critically examine the motives of those in power and to consider how we can effectively wield power in our own lives and careers. While it is important to maintain trust and uphold ideals, it is equally essential to be realistic about the potential for deception and manipulation. By understanding and applying Machiavelli's teachings judiciously, we can become more aware of the strategies employed by others and develop the skills necessary to resist manipulation and protect ourselves from exploitation. And what happened next might surprise you. Okay, so Machiavelli's thing isn't really about being a jerk. It's more about knowing the game. Like, you don't have to be shady to survive a shady world. You just need to know that not everyone plays fair and that people often see what they want to see. Once you get that, you stop being totally gullible and start being strategically nice. Basically, you're cool when it helps, but you're not a pushover when someone tries to pull a fast one. This also means keeping some stuff private, watching how people act, and letting them show their true colors before you fully trust them. And when things go south, like a breakup or someone betraying you, you don't just fall apart. You roll with it and stay hopeful but also aware. Look, some people might find Machiavelli's ideas a bit much, but they're actually pretty empowering. They remind you that life isn't automatically unfair. It's just got some unspoken rules everyone knows but doesn't talk about. Once you know those rules, you get to decide how you want to play the game. And you can even change some of the rules yourself while still being a decent person. Basically, Machiavelli's all about being practical. You got to balance your ideals with what's really going on, and you need to be able to adapt and think strategically. He knows there are some sketchy people out there, but he's not saying you should be one of them. He's just giving you a way to deal with them without losing who you are. He gets that there's always some kind of power play happening between people, and you need to pay attention to that. Being nice and trusting is cool, but you also need to be careful. It's about looking out for yourself and doing your own thing, but also being cool and working with others when it makes sense. At the end of the day, Machiavelli's telling you to get real about the world and figure out how to navigate it without becoming someone you don't want to be. Even when things are tough or unfair, you can still do well without losing your soul. So the question boils down to this: do you think just being nice is enough, or do you need a bit more strategy to get through life? Are you going to keep playing it safe and blend in, or will you add some mystery and influence to your game while still sticking to your values? It's your call, and honestly, it always has been. As Machiavelli might point out, it's about understanding that people who combine kindness with smart moves, honesty with strategy, and being visible with a touch of intrigue are the ones who really hold the power. If this makes you a bit uncomfortable, that's a good thing. It means you're seeing the real game of influence for what it is. And with this knowledge, you can change how it's played. People remember those who knew how to navigate the world with their eyes open, not those who just watched from the sidelines. This isn't about being a bad person. It's about taking a realistic approach to life, one that sees how power works, but still holds on to your morals. It's saying you can use strategy to reach your goals without losing your values. It's a balancing act. It's not about becoming mean or sneaky. It's about knowing what's going on and using that to your advantage. It's about understanding that being kind and genuine is important, but it's not always enough. Sometimes you need a bit of strategy and mystery to get respect and achieve what you want. Basically, it's about using both your heart and your head, your morals and your strategy. It's about being more aware and intentional in how you live, so you can navigate things with both wisdom and integrity. Now the final question remains, will you adapt or will you be devoured by those who already have? If you've made it here, why don't you push the like button and subscribe to the channel? Then perhaps you sense the gravity of these ideas. Machiavelli's teachings aren't easy to swallow. They challenge us to face our own fears of manipulation and moral compromise. But sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that set us free. And if this video made you reconsider the delicate balance between being good and being clever, then you've taken the first step out of naivety. Remember, power is in the silence. Those who keep certain thoughts unsaid, who let others reveal their weaknesses first, often hold the real keys to influence. Use your voice with purpose, but never forget that what you don't say can be just as powerful as what you do. Now it's up to you to decide how to apply this in your own life. After all, the world may be relentless, but with the right knowledge, you can become the anomaly that no one dares to underestimate. Until next time, stay strong and be fearless.